Once upon a time, in a small cottage at the edge of a quiet village, there lived a woman who wanted nothing more in the world than a child. She had a warm hearth and a little garden full of flowers. She had a wooden rocking chair by the window and shelves lined with books she had read 100 times. Her life was gentle and good, but in the evenings, when the sun went down and the cottage grew quiet, she would sit by the fire and feel the particular kind of loneliness that only comes from a home that is missing someone small. There was once a woman who wished very much to have a little child, but she could not obtain her wish. At last, she went to a fairy and said, "I should so very much like to have a little child. Can you tell me where I can find one?" "Oh, that can be easily managed," said the fairy. "Here is a barley corn of a different kind to those which grow in the farmer's fields and which the chickens eat. Put it into a flower pot and see what will happen." "Thank you," said the woman, and she gave the fairy 12 shillings, which was the price of the barley corn. Then she went home and planted it, and immediately there grew a large handsome flower, something like a tulip in appearance, but with its leaves tightly closed as if it were still a bud. "It is a beautiful flower," said the woman, and she kissed the red and golden colored leaves. And while she did so, the flower opened, and she could see that it was a real tulip. Within the flower, upon the green velvet stamens, sat a very delicate and graceful little maiden. She was scarcely half as long as a thumb, and they gave her the name of Thumbelina because she was so small. A walnut shell, elegantly polished, served her for a cradle. Her bed was formed of blue-violet leaves, with a rose leaf for a counterpane. Here she slept at night, but during the day she amused herself on a table, where the woman had placed a plate full of water. Round this plate were wreaths of flowers with their stems in the water, and upon it floated a large tulip leaf, which served as a boat for Thumbelina. Here the little maiden sat and rowed herself from side to side. It really was a very pretty sight. Tiny could also sing so softly and sweetly that nothing like her singing had ever before been heard. One night, while she lay in her pretty bed, a large, ugly, wet toad crept through a broken pane of glass in the window and leaped right upon the table where Tiny lay sleeping under her rose-leaf quilt. "What a pretty little wife this would make for my son," said the toad. And she took up the walnut shell in which little Tiny lay asleep, and jumped through the window with it into the garden. In the swampy margin of a broad stream in the garden lived the toad with her son. He was uglier even than his mother, and when he saw the pretty little maiden in her elegant bed, he could only cry, "Croak, croak, croak." "Don't speak so loud, or she will wake," said the toad. "We will place her on one of the water lily leaves out in the stream. It will be like an island to her. She is so light and small, and then she cannot escape. And while she is away, we will make haste and prepare the stateroom under the marsh, in which you are to live when you are married." The tiny little creature woke very early in the morning, and began to cry bitterly when she found where she was, for she could see nothing but water on every side of the large green leaf, and no way of reaching the land. Then she swam out with her ugly son to the leaf on which she had placed poor little Tiny. The old toad bowed low to her in the water, and said, "Here is my son. He will be your husband, and you will live happily in the marsh by the stream." Both swam away with it, leaving Tiny all alone on the green leaf, where she sat and wept. She could not bear to think of living with the old toad, and having her ugly son for a husband. The little fishes who swam about in the water beneath had seen the toad and heard what she said, so they lifted their heads above the water to look at the little maiden. So they assembled together in the water, round the green stalk which held the leaf on which the little maiden stood, and gnawed it away at the root with their teeth. Then the leaf floated down the stream, carrying Tiny far away out of reach of land. Tiny sailed past many towns, and the little birds in the bushes saw her, and sang, "What a lovely little creature!" So the leaf swam away with her farther and farther, till it brought her to other lands. A graceful little white butterfly constantly fluttered round her, and at last alighted on the leaf. Tiny pleased him, and she was glad of it. She took off her girdle and tied one end of it round the butterfly, and the other end of the ribbon she fastened to the leaf, which now glided on much faster than ever, taking little Tiny with it as she stood. Which now glided on much faster than ever, taking little Tiny with it as she stood. He seized her round her delicate waist with his claws and flew with her into a tree. Oh, how frightened little Tiny felt when the cockchafer flew with her to the tree. But the cockchafer did not trouble himself at all about the matter. He seated himself by her side on a large green leaf, gave her some honey from the flowers to eat, and told her she was very pretty, though not in the least like a cockchafer. After a time, all the cockchafers turned up their feelers and said, "She has only 2 legs. How ugly that looks. She has no feelers," said another. "She is like a human being." "Oh, she is ugly," said all the lady cockchafers. Then he flew down with her from the tree and placed her on a daisy, and she wept at the thought that she was so ugly that even the cockchafers would have nothing to say to her. During the whole summer, poor little Tiny lived quite alone in the wide forest. She wove herself a bed with blades of grass and hung it up under a broad leaf to protect herself from the rain. Thumbelina spent the summer all alone in the forest, surviving gently on drops of dew and sweetness from flowers. But as the seasons changed, the world around her began to grow cold. The soft greens faded into autumn, and soon the long, harsh winter arrived. Snowflakes, heavy as stones to someone as small as her, fell upon her fragile body, and shivering with cold and hunger, she wandered until she found shelter beneath the earth in a quiet cornfield, where a kind field mouse welcomed her inside and gave her warmth. Grateful and gentle, Thumbelina stayed through the winter, helping by cleaning the little home and telling soft, beautiful stories. But one day the mouse spoke of her neighbor, a rich mole who lived deep underground. When the mole arrived, dressed in dark velvet and speaking proudly, he dismissed the beauty of the sun and flowers, yet he was drawn to Thumbelina's sweet voice, and soon he decided that he wished to marry her. One day, the mole led Thumbelina and the mouse through a hidden tunnel beneath the earth, and there, lying still in the darkness, was a swallow cold and unmoving. Believing him dead, they left, but Thumbelina could not. That night, she returned in secret, gently covering the little bird with warmth and care, and slowly, to her amazement, his heart began to beat again. Through the long winter, she cared for him quietly, keeping his life hidden from the others. At last, spring returned, and with it, the swallow regained his strength. Grateful beyond words, he thanked her and asked her to fly away with him. But Thumbelina, kind-hearted as always, could not leave the field mouse behind. And so the swallow flew away alone, while she remained and cried. Soon, the decision was made for her. She was to marry the mole. Her heart refused, but the wedding day drew near. On the morning of her fate, she stepped outside for one last moment beneath the open sky. And suddenly, she heard a familiar sound. The swallow had returned. "Come with me," he called. "I owe you my life." And this time, she said yes. She held tightly to his feathers, and together they soared far away, leaving the darkness behind, until they reached warm lands filled with flowers and sunlight. There, upon a beautiful white blossom, stood a tiny prince with a golden crown, who looked at her with wonder and asked softly, "Will you be my queen?" And with a full heart, she answered, "Yes." In that moment, she was given delicate wings and a new name, Maya. And for the first time in her life, she truly belonged. The swallow sang one final song before flying away, and Thumbelina became the queen of the flowers, living happily, peacefully ever after.